has 4 chapters. It's only about an 8 to 10 minute read. But we're going to stop as we're reading because I want you to be challenged to be listening, following along, and especially noting what sound like words from the life of Jesus or his words or actions, all from Jesus, because there are several things that happen or that are recorded that sound a lot like Jesus or what happened to him. And you might also note some things that are polar opposites, particularly in Jonah himself. And I think those are also helpful to notice these things about Jesus and contrast to Jonah. So be watching and listening for those things as we read through. And third, I want us to be able to feel like we know what the book of Jonah generally is all about and what it says. I'm going to try to use some pictures for those of you who can see this being broadcast today. And I'm going to use some repetition to try to cement an overview of the book into our minds. Some of you may not like this method, I know, so I'm just asking you to patiently bear with me. We will not be doing this in future lessons. We won't even probably have this chart kind of situation up on the screen, but we'll return to a normal study. But for today, I've designed a lesson that is going to try to help us visualize and hear and really remember the general message of the book of Jonah. It's not designed for children, but I will tell you, for those of you with children, you may want to show them this video as a way to help them get the message of Jonah in their minds. So this will be about knowing what the book of Jonah says, and we'll look at what it means and how it connects directly to Jesus Christ in some future lessons. I'm going to give you picture clues to some summary statements. That's what's going to appear on the screen. I'm hoping that you'll repeat these statements with me out loud, if you can, or at the very least in your head, be thinking of these things. And that way, by repeating this, you'll remember and have this general outline, this general feel for what the book of Jonah is about. So take out your Bible, open to Jonah chapter 1, or your device, open it up, and follow along with me as I read through the book of Jonah, and as I note some of the important elements of the story that happen. And hopefully it'll help us get a handle on what the book of Jonah is all about. So the first chapter, Jonah chapter 1. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, "Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come before me." So, story starts off with the word of the Lord came to Jonah. The second thing is go to wicked Nineveh. Word of the Lord came to Jonah. Go to wicked Nineveh. Verse 3. But Jonah arose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. Word of the Lord came to Jonah, go to wicked Nineveh. But instead, Jonah went to Joppa to go to Tarshish from the Lord. Instead, Jonah went to Joppa to go to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. Verse 4, but the Lord sent out a great wind on the sea, and there was a mighty tempest on the sea, so that the ship was about to be broken up. Then the mariners were afraid, and every man cried out to his God, and threw the cargo that was in the ship into the sea to lighten the load. But Jonah had gone down into the lowest parts of the ship, had laid down, and was fast asleep. So the captain came to him and said, "What do you mean, sleeper? Arise, call on your God. Perhaps your God will consider us, so that we may not perish." The word of the Lord came to Jonah, "Go to wicked Nineveh." Instead, Jonah went to Joppa, to Tarshish from the Lord. And the Lord sent a storm, and the sailors were afraid, and Jonah was asleep. They said to one another in verse 7, "Come, let us cast lots, that we may know for whose cause this trouble has come upon us." So they cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. And they said to him, "Please tell us, for whose cause is this trouble upon us? What is your occupation? Where do you come from? What is your country? And of what people are you?" So he said to them, "I am a Hebrew, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and dry land." Then the men were exceedingly afraid and said to him, "Why have you done this thing?" For the men knew that he had fled from the presence of the Lord, because he had told them. And they said to him, "What shall we do that the sea may be calm?" For the sea was growing very tempestuous. The word of the Lord came to Jonah: "Go to wicked Nineveh." Instead, he went to Joppa to go to Tarshish from the Lord. The Lord sent a storm, and the sailors were afraid. Jonah was asleep, and they determined by lot Jonah was the cause. I have a dice there picture. We don't know exactly how, if they drew straws or if they had something like dice or something, but anyway, you get the idea that they had determined by lots that Jonah was the cause. What shall we do? Listen to what they said. It said in verse 12 of Jonah 1, "And he said to them, 'Pick me up and throw me into the sea. Then the sea will become calm for you. For I know that this great tempest is because of me.' Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to return to land, but they could not, for the sea continued to grow more tempestuous against them. Therefore they cried out to the Lord and said, 'We pray, O Lord, please do not let us perish for this man's life, and do not charge us with innocent blood, for you, O Lord, have done as it pleased you.' So they picked up Jonah and threw him into the sea, and the sea ceased its raging. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly and offered sacrifice to the Lord and took vows." So it was determined by lot that Jonah was the cause, and Jonah tells them to throw him into the sea, and they do so, and the sea was calm. The word of the Lord came to Jonah. Can you say it with me? What's next? Go to wicked Nineveh. But instead, Jonah went to Joppa to go to Tarshish from the Lord. What did the Lord send? The Lord sent a storm, and the sailors were afraid. Jonah was asleep. They determined by lots that Jonah was the cause. Jonah tells them to throw him into the sea, and they do, and the sea is calm. Last two verses of chapter 1. Now the men feared the Lord exceedingly and offered a sacrifice to the Lord and took vows. And now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. So determined by lot that Jonah was the cause, Jonah tells them to what? Throw him into the sea. They do so, and the sea is calmed. Jonah is swallowed by a fish God prepared. He was in the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Jonah was asleep. It's determined by lot that Jonah is the cause. Jonah tells them to throw him into the sea. They do so, and the sea is calmed. Jonah is swallowed by a fish that was prepared by God, and he was in the fish, how many? 3 days and 3 nights. That's the end of chapter 1. Chapter 2 begins that then Jonah prayed to the Lord, his God, from the fish's belly. So from the fish's belly, Jonah prayed. And he said, verse 2 of chapter 2, I cried out to the Lord because of my affliction, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. He prayed out of the belly of the fish. And here's what he prayed. For you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the floods surrounded me. All your billows and all your waves passed over me. Then I said, I have been cast out of your sight, yet I will look again toward your holy temple. The waters surrounded me, even to my soul. The deep closed around me. Weeds were wrapped around my head. I went down to the moorings of the mountains. The earth with its bars closed behind me forever. Yet I have been brought up, but yet you have brought up my life from the pit, O Lord, my God. When my soul fainted within me, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer went up to you into your holy temple. Chapter 2 begins that Jonah prayed from the fish's belly, and he says, I remembered the Lord. Jonah prayed from the fish's belly, and he said, I remembered the Lord. Keep reading. Those who regard worthless idols forsake their own mercy. Idols are worthless. Jonah prayed from the belly of the fish. He remembered the Lord. He said, idols are worthless. But I will sacrifice to you with the voice of thanksgiving. I will pay what I have vowed. Salvation is of the Lord. So he says, I will pay what I have vowed. I know he didn't use a credit card. It's just a memory device. So it's a way for you to remember that he said that he would pay his commitment. He will pay what he vowed to the Lord. Jonah prayed from the fish's belly. He said, I remembered the Lord. Idols are worthless. I will pay what I have vowed. And finally, he said, salvation is of the Lord. So salvation is of the Lord. So the Lord spoke to the fish, and the fish vomited him out onto dry land. Jonah prayed from the fish's belly. I remembered the Lord, he said. Idols are worthless. I will pay what I have, what? I will pay what I have vowed. And he recognizes that salvation is of the Lord. And God caused the fish to spit him out on dry land. Chapter 3 of Jonah begins, now the word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, just like in the beginning of chapter 1. Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and preach to it the message that I tell you. The same as chapter 1. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, go to Nineveh. So Jonah arose and went to Nineveh, according to the word of the Lord. Now Nineveh was an exceeding great city, a 3-day journey in extent. And Jonah began to enter the city on the first day's walk. Then he cried out and said, yet 40 days and Nineveh shall be overthrown. So the word of the Lord came to Jonah, go to Nineveh. And Jonah preached that Nineveh shall be overthrown in 40 days. Jonah chapter 3, and now verse 5. So the people of Nineveh believed God, proclaimed a fast, and put on sackcloth from the greatest to the least of them. Then word came to the king of Nineveh, and he arose from his throne and lay aside his robe, covered himself with sackcloth and sat in ashes. And he caused it to be proclaimed and published throughout Nineveh by the decree of the king and his nobles, saying, neither let man nor beast, herd or flock taste anything. Do not let them eat or drink water, but let man and beast be covered with sackcloth and cry mightily to the God. Yes, let everyone turn his evil way and from the violence that is in his hands. Who can tell if God will turn and relent and turn away from his fierce anger so that he may not perish? The word of the Lord came to Jonah. Go to Nineveh, and Jonah preached that Nineveh would be overthrown in 40 days. And Nineveh turned. Nineveh repented. Look at this last verse in Jonah 3, verse 10. When God saw their works, that they turned from their evil way, and God relented from the disaster that he had said that he would bring upon them, and he did not do it. God did not destroy Nineveh. Chapter 3, the word of the Lord came to Nineveh. Came to Jonah. Go to Nineveh. Jonah preached that Nineveh would be overthrown in 40 days. Nineveh repented. God did not destroy Nineveh. Now, chapter 4. But it displeased Jonah exceedingly, and he became angry. Jonah was very angry. So he prayed to the Lord and said, Lord, was not this what I said when I was still in my country? Therefore I fled previously to Tarshish, for I know that you are gracious and merciful, slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, one who relents from doing harm. Jonah was very angry. Jonah knew God was merciful and loving. Verse 3. Therefore now, O Lord, please take my life from me, for it is better for me to die than to live. Jonah was so angry that he wanted to die. Jonah was angry. Jonah knew that God was merciful and loving. Jonah was so angry that he wanted to die. Jonah chapter 4 and verse 5. Verse 4. Then the Lord said, is it right for you to be angry? So Jonah went out of the city and sat on the east side of the city. There he made himself a shelter and sat under it in the shade till he might see what would become of the city. And the Lord God prepared a plant and made it come up over Jonah, that it might be shade for his head to deliver him from his misery. So Jonah was very grateful for the plant. But as morning dawned, the next day God prepared a worm, and it so damaged the plant that it withered it. And it happened when the sun arose that God prepared a vehement east wind, and the sun beat on Jonah's head so that he grew faint. Then he wished death for himself and said, it is better for me to die than to live. Jonah's angry. Jonah knew that God was merciful and loving. Jonah was so angry that he wanted to what? He wanted to die. God taught him a lesson with a vine. Read more about this lesson in Jonah chapter 4. Verse 9. Then God said to Jonah, is it right for you to be angry about the plant? And he said, it is right for me to be angry, even to death. But the Lord said, you have had pity on the plant for which you have not labored, nor made it grow, which came up in a night and perished in a night. And should I not pity Nineveh, that great city, in which are more than 120,000 persons who cannot discern between their right hand and their left, and much livestock? The lesson was about God's pity for those who are lost. Jonah was very angry. Jonah knew that God was merciful and loving. Jonah was so angry that he wanted to die. God taught him a lesson using what? Using a vine. And the lesson was about God's pity for the lost. I hope that you have a better idea in your mind right now about the whole picture of what happens in the book of Jonah, because it starts off with the word of the Lord coming to Jonah, go to Nineveh. Instead, he goes to Joppa to go to Tarshish from the Lord. The Lord sends a storm and the sailors are afraid. Jonah's asleep. They determine by lots that Jonah is the cause. Jonah tells them to throw him into the sea, and they do, and the sea is calm. Jonah is swallowed by a fish that's prepared by God, and he was in the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Jonah prayed from the fish's belly. He says, I remembered the Lord. Idols are worthless. I will pay what I have vowed, and salvation is truly of the Lord. He's spit out onto dry land by the fish, and the word of the Lord comes to Jonah, go to Nineveh. And Jonah preached that Nineveh would be overthrown in 40 days. Nineveh repented. God did not destroy Nineveh. But Jonah is very angry. Jonah knew God was merciful and loving. Jonah was angry and he wanted to die. God taught him a lesson with a vine. And the lesson was about God's pity for the lost. Those who are lost are truly cared for by God. I hope that this gives you a picture, and I hope that it excites you some, and that it helps you start to think about studying this book. I hope you were listening for not only the whole picture, but wait a minute, there are some things here about Jonah and about what happens and what is done that are similar or that are absolute stark opposite contrast with those things of Jesus Christ. Thank you for joining us. I hope you'll join me next week as we start to open this book and to understand why God did this, and particularly how it connects